Hey everybody, I'm here with one of my favorite customers, if not the favorite. I'm with Steve from DOTec, Architecture and Engineering. So these guys, first of all, are the absolute savages. And second of all, at this point, I think you guys have made how much? Definitely over 1 million in fees just from our leads alone. I'm guessing it should be closer to 1.5, maybe more, including all the referrals, repeat business, etc. So I really wanted to interview them because clearly they just know something most people in the space don't know, especially when it comes to the front end, like the way you guys run the sales team, do the closing, because as I said, you guys are savages. So yeah, man, let's kick it off. How's it going? How's your Monday?
Can't complain, man. Everything's been pretty good. Just dealing with all sorts of stuff that comes over from the weekend, but you know how that goes, you know.
Yeah. If we
Um,
can just get the formalities out of the way, if you could just introduce yourself for like 10 seconds, 20 seconds in terms of like what you guys do at DOTec, what type of services you offer, who you work with, stuff like that, just so people understand.
yeah, so I work for DOTec Engineering. We're a nationally licensed engineering firm. We also do architecture. We offer structural, civil, and MEP engineering services. We do carry licensure nationwide, so we do have a robust set of clientele. Um, Most of it's going to be manufacturers, architects, business owners, franchises, anybody that really needs any sort of construction documents. Typically, we generally like to stay like on a smaller scope, so we're not building like universities and stuff like that. A lot of it's just going to be like light commercial, industrial, and residential work,
Mm-hmm.
and it really kind of depends on what discipline we go into. Most of our work is going to be structural work. A
Okay.
lot of different manufacturers and stuff like that, like pre-engineered metal buildings and stuff like that. So
Sure.
we help out a lot of different companies with their construction documents, so they can sell to their clients, and they don't have to, their clients don't have to deal with that stuff.
Sure. Cool shit. I guess I know for you guys last year was pretty big, like a lot of changes internally, like, obviously the team is growing, sales team is growing, all that good stuff. But could you please walk me through, I guess, the set of company before we started working together last year? Mostly what I'm curious about is, I guess, the main mechanisms of getting the leads, of like, generating interest, getting the business, stuff like that.
Prior to working with you.
Yeah, yeah, before we started.
Okay, so prior to working with you, we are mainly relying on trickle campaigns. We use Zoom Info to source our prospects. That's like our main prospecting tool, and then a lot of cold calling as well. So you are limited with your account as far as Zoom Info is concerned. Is like you think you get like 1,000 credits that you can pull from each month, and then you can make manual lists, and that's 2,000 on a seat for
Right.
whatever tier that we're. And then we used their like an email campaign, which was called Engage.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that actually ended up getting us in a lot of trouble. We switched up, and now we're using Instantly. So
Mm-hmm.
a lot better results with that. But obviously, um, there's some constraints with Instantly as far as like how many you can put out, because I mean, before we were real cowboys, we'd put out lists of 1,000, send them out.
Yeah.
500, it wasn't crazy, I mean, we were just like actual spammers, I mean, for lack of words. I mean, but it bred really good results, in the time
Right.
that it was working. um but as the internet providers start cracking down on emails and stuff like that, obviously we really got into some issues
Mm.
with that. We had to change up our strategies and kind of pivot with the times. We
Yeah.
were we have 20 different domains that we sell out of now. So we don't really have
Yeah.
any.
So it's been mostly like just cold outbound, pretty much cold calling, cold email. What would you say has changed since, since we came in and introduced you guys to the concept of paid ads, of, you know, running on
Well,
an
it's
ads?
just I mean, like you're getting in front of the right people that have a vested interest in the services that you provide. It's not necessarily all the way warm, but I mean, it's as warm as you can get. You know, I mean, these people, for the most part, have a need, and whether or not you can fulfill those needs is going to be entirely up to you. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
as far as pricing is concerned, availability and bandwidth is obviously an issue. You know, I mean, we don't we only have so many engineers, and there's only so many hours in a week. But fortunate enough to that, you know, we have that bandwidth that we can take on projects and we can pump them out with, you know, relative, you know, with good effect. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So,
And in terms of like how warm the leads are, it's actually like a pretty common, you know, misconception that people in the space have. Is like if they start doing marketing, they expect for people to be like, "Hey, bro, like here's my money. Let's start working," which is obviously not the case. Like the fact that they're not willing to just give you all the business upfront, it does not mean they're unqualified, because like it's not a referral, right? It's not somebody that already knows, likes, and trusts you, right? But that being said, it's somebody who is qualified, who needs a service, but there needs to be some work done. Whether it's like some people that just don't know the concept, they just like think like, oh, they're going, all of them are gonna buy, you know, which is obviously not.
yeah, yeah, that's definitely not going to be the case. But I mean, you know, they are interested, you know, and they do have questions. So a lot of the time, it's just going to be walking through these people, qualifying them as you talk to them, and you know, trying to start come up with a deal and close them. You know, I mean, that's really the big thing. You know, if you think that you're going to land every single lead that you get, that's not going to be the case. You know, but you're going to hit home runs off of them, you know, and those home runs stack pretty quick if you're selling whatever it is you're selling. So, I mean, we're fortunate to work in a business with relatively decent margins, you know, and we already have that influx of our clientele normally. You know, obviously we're not banking on this being our only mode of, or like our only funnel, really. You know, I mean, we have multiple funnels working all at once, and we have existing clientele that basically, you know, keep us busy. You know, this is all just cherry on the top type stuff, you know?
Yeah, well, absolutely, and this is I think the perfect setup for it, because you know, like you wouldn't want to have everything in one place, right? But at the same time, like which is what most people do, you can't always just rely on referrals, especially if it's a smaller firm, right? Like it's just, you know, it's just not gonna happen. So what people do is like they just prefer to not do anything at all and just kind of wait and hope, and you know, things get better eventually. And which is like I get like why it happened, because I think historically, well, the industry we're in, the AEC, not including construction, because these guys adopted it pretty quickly. It's been historically just a very like referral based sort of model, right? Like, you know, people did business in person. Architects weren't allowed to advertise up to a certain point. So I get what like where it's an old industry, but that being said, like you gotta adopt, like, you know, because right now like people go out of business because of that, you know, because now like the buyers are more sophisticated, they look stuff up online, stuff like that, and people just like it's foreign to them, to a lot of them, you know.
Well, especially like in the engineering field itself. I mean, you know, obviously you have a lot of people that are retiring, a lot of firms are closing down, and it seems like there's a lot of consolidation happening in the environment, you know. So you can rely on referrals, that's fine, but I mean, you know, is that going to really help you scale? And that's really what we're looking for, right? When you're talking about marketing and, you know, how are you going to get to that next step, that next, you know, $1 million on the bottom line? And unless you are actively marketing and you're chasing down every lead you can't just wait and, you know, hope that the bus full of customers just stops at your front door and opens up and just people walk in. That's not going to happen. You're going to have to attract people that you normally wouldn't have that reach or that, you know, you can't rely on, you know, referrals, you know, or just your regular clientele. You have to bring in new clientele that is going to offer you business if you plan on scaling.
Yeah, for sure, because you can't have a predictable scale without having a predictable acquisition method. Because a lot of times
Right.
it does boil down to the numbers. Like, what's your CAC, what's your cost per acquisition, how much you need to spend. If you need more, you just increase it. If it's referral, like you can't increase the number of people they'll call you next month. You know,
Right. Yeah, exactly.
nobody
You can't.
can. Yeah, and
So,
overall, you guys, I mean, you do. It seems like you do scale pretty quickly. I'm curious, what would you say were the main points that actually like allowed you to do that, to kind of have this jump from say like 7 figures to 8 figures?
well, I mean, to be completely honest, we are able to scale on 2 points really is the marketing is number one, obviously, because you can't scale without clients. And then internally, our teams are very good at bringing people in, so we're able to hire, develop, engineers and EITs and people like that and scale, so that it makes sense for the organization.
Yeah,
That's the big thing is like, yeah, you can bring in as many clients as you want, but if you don't have the bandwidth or the personnel to fulfill those orders, then everybody's getting, a bad experience because it's going to take long for everything, So
yeah,
it is kind of like, all right, well, what are you going to do with these 10 leads or 20 leads or 50 leads that you're able to gather in a month? Like how are you going to be able to service them and give them, the customer service, the client experience that they're looking for that's going to generate additional revenue from
sure.
So all right, well, these guys are good. They got us our stuff fast. Let's give them another project, and that's really what it comes down to. I think when we were working with you, we were averaging between 30 and 35 leads, and those are dispersed between 10 salespeople, you
Hmm.
know? So, if you don't have that bandwidth to handle, not only, I mean, you have to think about this too. It's like you also have to consider bidding out 35 projects.
Yeah.
You have a dedicated team to do that. And, all of the infrastructure that comes along with being able to, mass produce construction documents
Yeah.
in a timely fashion.
Well, the thing I see right now, which is actually like more common, is because a lot of people I speak with, they actually have the capacity to take more work, right? What they don't have is that they don't have any projects, they don't have any people to work with because like all of the developers stopped building because of the interest rates, whatever, and they don't know how to get business themselves. And I think what really made you guys successful, I'm assuming, but that's something I can see that you guys do differently from some of the people we work with. Is you guys are very front end oriented. Like you have a sales team. Like you really push sales, and the sales team is pretty motivated as well. So could you please walk me through that setup? Like what do you think you guys do differently when it comes to the front end? Like when it comes to the sales, as opposed to the most companies in the field do.
Well, like one of the things that we do differently is that we have dedicated account managers for all of our accounts. So we're CC'd on all of our correspondence and we handle all the day-to-day administrative tasks. We don't want our engineering firm or like our engineers to be like um, bogged down in administrative work, right? So we have people that are, I mean, you try to call one of us, we answer, every single time. For my accounts, they only deal with me. I know their names, I know what they want, I know the people in the accounting department and all this stuff. So what it really comes down to is like, how could we create a more like a client focused service so that if they have questions, they can get their responses in a timely and reasonable, in a reasonable time frame. Because there are a lot of back and forth that goes between uh, our engineering team and our clients, right? And those clients generally have end clients that they have to deal with. So it's not odd to hear, like, when I'm talking to these people, like, hey, you submitted this information, what's going on with your current provider, or the engineering team that's supporting your operations now. A lot of it is like, oh, well, they don't really get back to us, things are taking longer, prices are increasing. but a lot of that really just what I'm hearing is like you're not talking to the guy that you need to talk to in a reasonable time frame, and
Yeah.
that's a big thing. Is people are willing to pay a little bit more to know that hey, if I answer or ask a question, it's going to get answered.
So you're walking
Hey,
them all the way through. It's not that you just close the deal, you pass them along. Like you kind of develop this relationship.
yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say like a project manager, but I definitely have to keep tabs on projects, and then after the project's finished, you follow up. You have to talk to them.
Yeah, that's the
Hey,
thing.
how
It
did
probably gets you repeat business because of that as well, right? Just because
yeah,
you
I
always
mean,
kind of
really,
build this relationship.
exactly. I mean, you really have to understand like the journey of the customer's journey. Like you have to map out what is the ideal customer journey and how do we get them to the point when they're going to say, yes, I want this guy to do my next project. And then you kind of reverse engineer it. Like, all right, what do people say? They don't like how people aren't in contact with them. They don't like that they have to wait for so long. I mean, that's just like the biggest pain point in engineering, because engineers are going to be, they're notorious for it. I mean, it's not uncommon that I would hear, oh, it takes this guy weeks to get back to me,
Mm.
you know,
To
and
speed.
a lot of yes, I mean, speed to lead, that's the biggest thing, when you're talking about marketing, but it also, once you've already acquired these clients, right? Like, how quickly can you service them and how can you, you know, meet their expectations and do what the other guys not do?
Yeah.
A lot of the guys that we work with in here, they're all from the car industry or direct sales, so they understand like how important it is to, build rapport with your clients, deal with them and talk to them. They have all those soft skills, right? And then it's just like, okay, well, we have to take it a notch higher because this is a little bit more sophisticated of a sales process because there's a lot of inherent liability within engineering,
Sure.
so there are some white gloves that have to kind of be put on and approach with these situations because a lot of the times they're time sensitive, they're delicate matters, there's NDAs that are involved if you're dealing with like, product development or any other um, just weird things that come along with engineering. A lot of people, they keep the card to
Yeah.
their chest. They don't want this guy to know what they're building. They don't want any. So it's a little bit more sophisticated of a process because obviously, we're not engineers. Any of the account managers, none of us are engineers. Um, and we don't know, we're not qualified to answer technical questions, but
Right.
we are qualified to walk downstairs and stare at an engineer until they respond to an email. Where
Yeah.
it really just comes down to like making sure that the customer feels like they're appreciated, you know, taking into account their journey, their expectations, what needs to be met in order to get that second, third, fourth, and so on project. And we have about a 95% retention rate on stuff that's not like site visits for, if a project, somebody who a tornado comes through and somebody needs a structural analysis on a building or something like that, obviously that's not the kind of client that we do that work all the time, but that's not the kind of client that we're really looking to develop relationships with.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
actually,
so
talking about that, what would you say was the biggest sort of client or like the biggest deal you got from us specifically from the ads we run?
definitely developer deals. So like people that are going to be building out uh, like subdivisions, because our
Mm.
civil team will have that. Generally speaking, I mean, we're talking about, they have a plot of land and they need all of the civil accoutrement that comes to, building out a master plan, all the way down to getting all like each independent pad, uh, uh, all the construction documents for that. So building all that, I mean, we're talking, hundreds of thousands of dollars for projects like that. But we've had some really good projects come through, a lot of custom homes, a lot of manufacturers, that maybe they're not high ticket, but the value of the client is very high because they do so much work that, maybe we're charging them $1,000 a pop, but if they send us 20 projects,
Right.
turns into 20, and they keep on going, it just keeps on coming in.
Yeah. What would
So
you say? What would you say is well, if you have any like tips, or I don't want to say tricks, but rather tips that you guys have that actually allow you to close like such big deals, and also good volume as well from from our leads.
I mean, the biggest thing is obviously like our the way that our engineering team really kind of rallies around sales to help us do this, because it's like, if I get a client that says, hey, I have this project, we're building a 2-story house or something like that, can I get a quote on it, whatever it is, right? Immediately, as soon as I get their drawings and all the information, scope of work and all that stuff, I put it into our little computer machine here, and I say, hey man, I need a bid. And they give me a bid. Speed to lead.
Hmm.
It works. If you can exceed their expectations, usually they might be a week or two out before somebody even takes a look at it, and then all of a sudden this guy comes in and says, yeah, here's your price, this is what it costs to get started, here's all the onboarding docs, everything is sent over immediately,
Yeah.
so we can get going. We make it really easy to do business, and a lot of that's just trial and error. They started doing it one way, then they did it. We've been in business for 33 years, so we've had a lot of opportunities, and we've learned a lot of lessons, like what is the best way to conduct business, right? And if you know anything about engineering or architecture, it's as fast as possible, like within reason. I mean, obviously, accuracy, and
Well, yeah, yeah,
all that stuff, but let's just assume that that's not going to be the issue, right?
sure.
um, you want to be able to service a client because the last thing people think about is engineering, and it's the thing that's required. Yeah, you know what I mean. So, and usually people are like, oh well, I need an engineer and I need him yesterday. Okay, well, send me your documents. Let me see how much it's going to cost you. And from there on, that's what it is, man. Here it is. And then you put it in there, the ball in their court. you know. But usually when I'm talking to people, I'll give them a pretty good understanding, and I'll give them expectations like, hey, man, you send me this, I'm sending you this document, and this is going to be all the stuff that I need. You will receive it within 5 minutes. Bam. They open up their inbox, it's within 2 minutes, and you just do these little things over and over and over again, and it builds trust, right? So that's a big thing, is like, building a rapport with your clients, and, gaining little wins, and little free acts that are going to solidify their mentality that you're
Hmm.
a person that takes care of business, that you do what you say you're going to do,
And the
and that's
trust,
it.
right?
Right, exactly. Hey, this guy said that he was going to send us over in 5 minutes. It's sent over in 5 minutes. All right. He said that it's going to be 24 hours before he gets a quote to me. He sent it back in 12. You
Sure.
know, you do that over and over and over again, and eventually you'll build trust with somebody, and they'll probably be more likely to do business with you if there's not something else that needs to be considered.
Absolutely, and it's
That's it.
also with the volume, because obviously you can't get every single deal, so you got to make sure you have the flow,
Yeah.
right? And talking about marketing, because like, I mean, for anyone who either is already running or is considering to start running paid ads, doesn't matter if it's with us with somebody else. What would you say are the main principles that they you think need to follow? I mean, to make it work, to make sure they're not burning money.
Well, we do a couple things. So the first thing is like the leads. So obviously our leads are distributed between 10 people. So we have a dedicated, we just use an Excel spreadsheet, right? It's automated to go straight from, go high level into the Excel sheet. Now we developed this ourselves, but That way we know who's going to be handling each account. Then we audit it every single day to make sure that everybody's following up with the leads that they've been assigned, right? After that, it kind of depends. Like there's automation sequences that are built in. So like if you can't directly call somebody or text somebody or email somebody, you're giving people the option to engage with them. We have people that are monitoring the Go High Level app. That's where the leads are stored. And so the people can have direct conversations with them via text, email, all that stuff, and really what it comes down to is just following up, because you're not always going to be able to catch somebody on the phone. You're not always going to catch somebody in email. Might go to spam, might do whatever, right?
Yeah.
But I think the average that we have is about 4 touches before we actually get to somebody, and that includes no-shows and all that stuff too. Being available to take, establishing windows of availability for clients, so like when they set an appointment, somebody's going to be there to be on that appointment to talk to them and discuss their needs.
For sure.
We're very aggressive with this stuff. So, somebody gives us their phone call and requests information, we're going to try to get a hold of them to get them that information no matter what.
Well,
I mean,
and the thing is, it doesn't mean they're not interested or something if they don't pick up the first time. I mean, people have lives. People are busy. People are running companies, like sometimes they don't respond right away. So it's basically 2 things, right? It's like multiple touch points, following up enough times, and speed to lead. Like these are, in reality, this is what it all boils down to. Because like the leads are good,
And that's the thing is like when you talk to these people, they might have issues with their engineering firm or architecture, whatever business they are in, and if communication is a problem, and if you have somebody that's trying to reach out, offering the same service, and they're calling every day, they're texting every day, they're emailing every day. Yeah, is it annoying? Maybe, but guess what? You're doing the very thing that they say the other guys aren't going to do, right? So what does that tell them? Okay, well, this guy, wants our business. This guy's putting in more effort than the other guy was. And then on top of that, like all of our clients that don't immediately sign up for us, they immediately get put into a trickle campaign. So we stay in touch with people. I still have people reaching out from our trickle campaign from, back when we first started. It's not strange to do that. So you have to keep that stuff going because you paid for all these leads, right? So the most important thing is to say, all right, well, how can we capitalize on every dollar we spend? The best way is after that, you just throw them back into a trickle campaign and you run it every 3 months. Hey, they didn't buy from us immediately or they didn't ever purchase something. Why not try to keep selling them? I mean, they were interested at some point. It's very easy for them just to press a button and say unsubscribe. They won't hear from us again. But there might 500 leads that we were never able to get a hold of over the course of a year. But
like you run a reactivation campaign, like some of it, like 10 will respond, and there you go, like 2-3 extra deals just out of thin air, pretty much.
Yeah, exactly. That's the big thing, is just like trying to capitalize on every client that's given us the permission to reach out to them, right? And you just can't be scared, and you can't really be lazy. I mean, you can be lazy, you can be lazy. You can automate the software, you can do all this stuff, and you could just kind of churn it, but I mean, you're not going to be able to. I mean, you can automatically text people.
What I see, and it's like this mostly when it comes to smaller firms that are trying to get bigger, is that, well, like obviously they don't have a sales team yet, so they don't have the reps that are just dedicated to just like follow up, do the activity, and at the same time they're not willing to do it themselves. Some of them are lazy, but mostly it's because they have this like ego, when it's like, I'm the engineer, I'm the architect, like I studied in a school, so they're not really willing to do the sales and do the activity, right? Because a lot of times it's way more about the process and just doing the repetitions. Assuming the leads are good, which is like, I mean, you've seen our leads, like that, like obviously it's not like, I mean, they're good. There's the thing. But what people do sometimes is they're like, they just get some, and they like call them once and they say, oh, delete is bad, you know?
No. Yeah, no. Like, yeah, I mean, you can do that, and you could put a blindfold on your eye and throw a dart and maybe hit a bullseye. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what, if you put a blindfold over your eyes and you throw one, you're more likely to hit it if you throw 100 times than you are just once. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
you're not. It comes with being consistent, right? You have to consistently follow up with these people. You're not going to get them on the first touch, and going back to like, yeah, there are probably people that are going to say, oh, well, you know what? I called them. I didn't. It's not going to work. You got to call these people. This is a competitive industry. Whatever industry you're in right now, it's competitive, right? So if you don't follow up, you're not going to get everything that you can. You have to be greedy, like you have to try to get as much of these clients as you can because somebody else is going to get them.
Yeah, and it's,
They're,
it's,
they're,
it's that, but it's also another thing where it's like coming from a position of care for the customer. Because, I mean, look, I view it at that perspective. If somebody is reaching out to me, they have a problem that I potentially can solve. So by me not doing the activity, not following up, I'm basically just, making them a disservice because I know I could potentially turn their business around, get them more leads, get them more good customers so that they can, whatever, travel more,
right.
financial freedom, etc. But I'm not doing that because I'm lazy, and so this person stays the same,
Right.
Because they already said, hey, bro,
No,
call me,
yeah, I mean, and that's definitely the first step is, understanding that these are potential clients, right? They have a need that needs to be satisfied. And you should do everything in your power to help them get to wherever there's going to be, they want to go, I mean, and sometimes that's unrealistic, I mean, but trying to do what you can in order to help these people along, like I said, like the client's journey, that's important, right? Understanding that you have something that they need it. So how can we work together and satisfy that issue, that problem, right? We need to work together. I can get you these construction documents. What is the price that you want to pay? Okay, well, we can make that work, or no, we can't make that work.
Yeah, and that's what I think you guys have set up pretty well, which is what I think a lot of you just guys will, right? It's like having this balance between the front end and the back end. Because what most people do is they only focus on the back end. They only focus on how good their product is. And what I keep saying to them is like, look, man, it doesn't matter how good your design skills are, or how good of an engineer you are. If you don't have any projects, if you don't have any customers to help, like what are you gonna do? Why does it matter if you don't have anybody you can help?
Right, exactly. I mean, and that's the big thing. A lot of it comes down to, hey, what are you willing to sacrifice in order to get these projects, and whether it be like a little bit of profit, on the front end, but what if these people end up being studs and they end up sending you 4, 5, 10 projects a month, then it becomes, how can we turn this into a profitable client, and we do a lot of that stuff too, I mean, you're not going to get home runs every single time, but the most expensive thing in an engineering firm is not going to be like, it's just like an empty desk. It's somebody that's not clicking their little mouse and drawing pictures. Because these engineers cost a lot of money every hour that they're working, right? So even if we can get small projects that maybe don't have the margins as say a big project, but keeping them busy, keeping the business churning, is important, right? So
Yeah.
if they say, oh, well, we're bidding it out for $2,000. Oh, well, our normal guy does it for $1,500. If I do it for $1,500, you ready to go? Yeah. Well, guess what? That's $1,500 that we're taking in. That's $1,500 that guy's not taking in. But guess what? We just developed a relationship. Now it's time to get them what they need and do it over and over and over again,
Absolutely. This is why I love this industry, man. Like this is big with the engineers we work with. And it's also big with the architects we work with that work with developers. Sometimes they get a
Yep.
small job and then now he wants you for every project. Like we had one of the guys recently close a project and like he got paid like 500,000 in fees,
Yep.
from an ad that we put out, just because
And
like
I mean,
he got into the foot in the door and he built a relationship.
a lot of the times, I will say like, I don't want $100,000 deal right out the bat. Let's start off small. Let me demonstrate the ability to complete a project in a timely fashion with good effect. you know, and then we can try something bigger, something like that. And that might not necessarily always be the case because sometimes maybe someone's like, all right, well, I'm bidding out a data center and I need you guys to do the structurals on that. Obviously, it's going to be a huge project, right? But being able to just talk to these people and say, hey, man, I don't necessarily need the biggest project you have, but I want a foot in the door. What do you got going on that I can help you with? And all of a sudden, their brain starts thinking, okay, well, you know what? Maybe we're not even ready to start on that project for the next 3 months,
Hmm.
but we do have these smaller projects that maybe we can test you out and see how you guys work, see what the relationship between the two companies are, because there's always a learning curve. And you don't want to necessarily always jump into those learning curves on something that's like going to be super high ticket, like where we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars and thousands of man hours or whatever it is. You don't necessarily want to engage a client that way. Now, some of the big boys or big developers and stuff like that, that's what their expectations are, you know, but sometimes it makes sense to say, hey, you contacted me about this project. What else do you have? And it's just asking questions and just doing your due diligence before, um, you really get into, exchanging documents and all that stuff. As far as like, here, sign up.
Yeah.
Here's $100,000 client contract or service agreement, whatever it is. Well, sometimes people are going to be apprehensive about it or whatever and say, oh, maybe not so much. All right, well, what do you got for $5,000? What do you got for $6,000? So it's like just trying to work your way in because if they have big projects, chances are they might have small projects that nobody even wants to mess with.
Sure.
The local guy won't do it or whatever. Well, guess what? DOTec will. You know, we won't turn down money. We won't turn down work unless it's like crazy liability or something's just insane. But like, within reason, we're gonna ask for anything that you got to try to develop a relationship.
Because that's how it's built ultimately, like you just like you give and then like they'll come to you and ask for even more. Because I mean sometimes I kind of stopped doing that, but I used to have a few conversations with some people that do like interior design. And they're like, I always charge for the initial consultation. I'm like, well, you can do that, and you can make like what $300 upfront, but potentially losing like 10 clients that would have been a great customer, but just because your barrier entries is just too high, you know and it's being generous with your time, with your efforts as well. I think it's also the key part of sales just in general. I mean, especially in the AEC field.
Oh, definitely. I mean, that's the thing is like whatever we do, we bid out a project, we don't charge them anything. We do consultations, we don't charge them anything. It's until they really try to engage, is when we do it. You could have meetings with our engineers and stuff to talk about a potential project. That's not crazy. I mean, some of these guys, are making $100 an hour, you
Yeah.
know, I mean, that's their salary. I mean, it's whatever it is. You know, it could be $50 an hour, but still, I mean, we're taking $50 an hour and we're giving you access to a professional engineer. Who might have you know 20 years of experience on his belt. And he can tell you, all right, well, that's what I would do. What I would do, yeah. A lot of it too is going to be discovery. I mean, we're talking about it, learning a little bit more about the scope, so it helps us offer a better service to the client if we're scoped incorrectly. And generally speaking, the prices are just going to follow with that. I mean, because we have a standard rate that we charge. I mean, um, but yeah, I mean, being generous with people, especially prospective clients, I can understand, some niches or business models, where they say, oh well, I'm going to charge X amount for this or X amount for that, just right up front. well, okay, nobody wants to work for free, but at the same time, it's like you said, if you create a barrier of entry that's going to be a little bit too high for most people, then you're probably going to be leaving a lot of money on the table.
Absolutely. At the end of the day, it's just not worth it.
And a lot of times people are sort of, they're not they do this for a living. They deal with engineers for a living. They're not always going to be coming up with that $200,000 project right off the bat. I mean, that's really pretty rare. I mean, a lot of times they are going to test you with something small,
Yeah.
and they're going to see how you deliver, and they're going to see how you communicate. They're going to see how you treat them as a client. And if you can, like I said, exceed those expectations or at least meet them, they're more likely to say, okay, here's some more business, and just, it'll follow up, it could snowball, really. I mean, because like I said, like these people are,
Right.
like these documents are a requirement for them to do business a lot of the time. They
Hmm.
build a building. Well, guess what? They need to have skilled engineering drawings for that, so that's what I would say is going to be like the most important part of it too, is when you're talking about what is it that you are spending, and that's not just money, it's the time, it's the effort.
Hmm.
That's it, so.
Absolutely. I know you're a busy guy, so you probably got to run soon. I have like two last questions because the thing is, what I see a lot these days, because I mean, it is a bit of like old-fashioned, old-school industry, is a lot of firms they're like kind of they have a lot of negative beliefs about the ads and the online leads and all of that, so that they're not even trying anything of that, right? What would you say to them? What would you recommend?
I would say adapt or die. I mean, that's just the way it's going to be from now on. You look at the amount of people that are on Facebook, the amount of people that are on Google. I mean, if you're not in front of those people, then the people that are in front of them are going to get the business, right?
Like you guys, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the amount of growth that we've experienced is no longer something that's going to be not, it's something that we're going to need moving
Yeah,
forward. Yeah.
for sure.
Just because it's such a magnet, I mean, you do you get bad leads? Of course. Not everybody that walks into a store is going to buy something, you
Hmm.
know, but if you have good product and you have good service, you're honest people, you know, you you're going to make some connections, so that's the big thing.
Absolutely, man. And well, look, to summarize, how's your experience with us so far? What would you say?
Ex- Excellent. Excellent. Top notch. Top notch.
Appreciate it, man. Well, look, so grateful to have you here. I hope somebody benefited from it because, like, look, you definitely know some sauce, man. 100%. So I
Yeah.
appreciate you having here. Appreciate having you here. Damn.
Yeah, man.
English
Anytime.
is English is
Anytime.
hard, man. English is hard. But anyway, we'll wrap it
Oh,
up. Thank you so much for your
super.
time.
All right. Have a
Thank
good
you,
one, buddy.
man. We'll catch up.